is the Leon Charney Report. And now, here is your host, Leon Charney.
Welcome to another Leon Charney Report. And today we have with us the mayor of Ariel in Israel, a very staunch Likud member, former member of Knesset, on the list to be the next member of Knesset, and he's going to talk about what's happening in Israel today, because a lot is happening, and it's not all very good. Ron, welcome to the show.
Hi.
First of all, Ariel, how's Ariel doing, the city?
The city is doing well. Yesterday there was a report in the New York Times that we have 2,000 empty apartments. I am the mayor of the city. I have 4,000 families. There are 15,000 people.
Right.
15,000 people, and I don't know that there is one empty
Is that
apartment.
a true statement? Somebody called me about that today. Was that, it's erroneous, huh?
I don't know. I think that is with the intent to create something.
It does. It creates it's a whole ball of wax that starts to be created here.
You know, it reminds me the mega scandal. The mega scandal
Right.
in Washington, when the Washington Post said that there is a spy.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
I think that is the same story. I think that the American administration is trying to leak some information in order to put a pressure on the Israeli government, and I think they're doing wrong.
So that's interesting. You think the Washington Post story about the alleged spy, that the high guy up in the State Department, is a bluff? It's not true?
It's a bluff.
And you certainly can talk about what the New York Times says about the West Bank, because you say you have no apartments available. You have 4,000 families looking for apartments. Is that it?
We have 15,000 inhabitants today in Ariel, living in Ariel.
Right.
And because of the policy of the former government that I couldn't build as a mayor one apartment in 4 years.
Why? Rabin wouldn't allow it?
No.
The Rabin government?
No, the Rabin government did not allow to build in our region, and we have a lot of demand because people want to come and live. We have over 5,000 immigrants from Russia, and they bring each other. So when I read that article in the Israeli newspaper, I got a call from Israel. I said it's incredible. If 2,000 out of 4,000 families don't have a place to live, I as a mayor should know about it.
Absolutely.
And I said that is a big lie. I don't know what happened that the State Department leaks such an information, and the New York Times, which
So you think it's really a pressure issue?
Yes.
Because the peace process has been slowed down or halted. Is that correct?
I think that they're trying different measures.
Really?
Yes. I look at it in a very careful sight. It's very bad. I think it's not the way to be taken between two allies.
Wow. It's a heavy statement. It's New York City here.
New York City, the Big Apple. You know, America is the greatest friend of Israel, and Israel is the greatest ally of the United States in the Middle East. And I think that that is a mistake. And to put those informations...
If it's false, it's terrible. It's tragic. It's really tragic.
Someone has to check, and someone has to make a report, and someone has to pay for that.
Terrible. Ron, what is your feeling about the Oslo Agreement? What do you think about it?
You know, when I'm sitting here in your studio, I remember what you said to me, that the Oslo Agreement, as it was signed, was a big mistake.
Right.
Because they didn't think up to the end of the process to see where we're going to.
Right.
You said to me, and I said, Leon Charney, you say to me, to Ron Nachman, the head of the biggest town in the so-called occupied West Bank, and I said, look, you're right, and I was right. And the events that we now face show that it was not well cooked, well served, and well thought.
Well, my feeling was that if Arafat was sitting down with Rabin as a precondition, Rabin was really acknowledging the PLO at this point and saying that they exist. And I thought that Arafat at the same time should have knocked out the covenant against the destruction of Israel. And as we know it, he's still not has not taken that covenant out. So as you said, he's played that covenant 4 times and got 4 concessions. But obviously, Shimon Peres didn't make that much of a deal about it. I think 2 weeks ago, I think May 6th was the date, 1 year from the time that they promised to take down a covenant, and they didn't take down the covenant or repeal it. And that was my feeling about it. And I said that Yitzhak Rabin, may rest in peace, should have said to Arafat, look, I recognize you, you recognize me, take away the covenant, let's go to Geneva and sit and talk, because this is a real complicated problem. And hopefully a lot of lives might have been saved, but that's history. And now you've signed on it. Bibi Netanyahu, you're a member of the Likud.
Correct.
You're probably a member of the inner council there. You're probably a member of everything in the Likud. Bibi Netanyahu, who is your prime minister. And I got to say, I spoke to Ruby Rivlin this morning, who's a member of Knesset, and will be on the show next week. He said there's so much anger against Bibi in Washington, he was amazed. Are you amazed that many Americans are very angry at Bibi?
Yes, not only against Bibi. I think that the participation of the American government in the elections in Israel was not good.
You mean that Clinton endorsed
Clinton,
Peres?
not only that. I was a member of the Finance Committee in the parliament in Israel. And I know that the American administration allowed Israel to use, in the year of 94, $600 million from the loan guarantees to cover the budget, the Israeli budget. In the year of 1995, they allowed $900 million. In the year of the elections, 96, the $2 billion could go to cover the expenses of the Israeli budget. I, as an Israeli citizen, will have to pay back the Americans that loan. Nobody talks about that. That involvement was very bad. And I would like to mention, with your permission, you asked me about the Palestinian Covenant. What is the problem with the Oslo Agreement? We have few things that the people must understand what is all about, not slogans. Arafat was given by Oslo Agreement 30% of the territory of Judea and Samaria. The Israeli government, my government, your government, gave him 30% of the territory of Judea and Samaria. Such a thing never happened under any Arab country control, not in Gaza by Egypt, not in the West Bank by Jordan. The Israeli government gave them 30% of the territories. Number 2, they agreed in Oslo that there will be a safe passage, because they say that Gaza,
between Gaza and Jericho,
Gaza and the West Bank,
right,
for the Palestinians is one unit. If it is one unit, you need an access from one place to another.
Right.
Israel became the only country in the world that another entity cuts its territory in 2 pieces, like, remember Berlin?
Right.
In Germany.
Did they ever build a road? No, they haven't built
No, they use the Israeli roads, and they can put a bomb, as the suicide bombs that came from Gaza to Tel Aviv. Number 3 is the water.
Yeah, big issue.
Big issue. And for my opinion, the next war in the Middle East will be over water. Israel takes the water from the mountains of Samaria. If Arafat gets the land, he owns what is above and below the land, the surface. So the problem of the water is very severe problem.
Right. It's a big problem at Jordan too, isn't it?
And yes, I'll say a few words about it. And the next problem with the Oslo Agreement is the expectations of the Palestinians, high expectations. For example, Temple Mount was given to the Palestinians, and at the same time to the Jordanian. They got foothold on the Temple Mount. Israel is out. And you see what's happening in Jerusalem. If Arafat continues with his strategic goals to create a Palestinian state in the 67 borders, on which Henry Kissinger once said that those borders might be the Auschwitz borders. It is Henry Kissinger who said so. Arafat says that Jerusalem will be the capital of that Palestinian state, and he insists to bring back to Palestine 3.5 million refugees. That is like America will have to swallow 160 million refugees.
Well, the law of return for the Arabs.
Law of return, very innocent. They talk about the equation, you Jews have the right of return, we the Palestinians, we will have also the right of return. And the rate of 3.5 million refugees coming to Palestine is like the United States will swallow and absorb 160 million refugees.
Well, it's not only that. They want to return to their old homes, which could be Tel Aviv, could be Ra'anana, could be Kfar Saba, could be Jerusalem, could be any place, right?
Yeah, this is part of the problem. But let's say that they will remain in the West Bank.
Right.
What will they eat? Where will they work? Where will they live? You know, it's amazing. People have to think about those things. Who will support them? The donors' countries, the American money, the European money. Who will keep them? Where are their brothers? Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Egypt.
All right, so there's a lot of problems.
Sure.
But you have an Oslo agreement, you have a Likud government. They have to take into account the fact that this is a government agreement, and they have to stand by it. Now, how do they handle it? What do they do?
That is one of the problems. Before the elections, I myself said that even if the Likud and Netanyahu will come to power, we cannot stop the Oslo Agreement because of the signature of Christopher, the foreign minister of Russia,
President
Rabin,
Clinton.
and yes, it's Clinton.
Right.
So I give an example. If you buy a house and something is going wrong, you go to the developer and you fix it. You correct. You're a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. You know that we make a mistake in a contract, we can correct it. That is a mistake, the Oslo Agreement. If we continue, we know exactly, if everyone knows, that it will lead to a collision course and a disaster.
So it's a mistake. So what are you saying? Rescind the contract?
No, we need to correct it. And I think that Netanyahu wants to correct the Oslo Agreement, that it will not lead to a disaster in Israel.
You think it's possible?
No, because the Palestinians and the Americans, they talk not about the contract, they are talking about the spirit of the contract.
Right, okay. So let's do a reality check.
Yeah.
You have a contract, you want to change it. You're a lawyer, you want to rescind it, you say it's a mistake, so you want to rescind it, basically, and change it, modify it, whatever you want to do.
Yes.
You think world opinion will allow that to happen today?
It's very hard to expect because people don't know the details of the Oslo Agreement. For example, if Arafat, as you mentioned, he had to cancel the Palestinian covenant which calls to the destruction of the state of Israel. And he did nothing. And he wants to sell once and again to the state of Israel the same item. If he does not stop calling for jihad, what kind of peace we have with terrorism?
All right, let's say you're 100% correct, but did not Bibi Netanyahu make a terrible mistake by promising his people he would never talk to Arafat, and then he went and talked to Arafat 100 days later, when if he wanted to really talk to him, when he had political capital, he should have done it the first 24 hours and call him up and say, look, Yasser, I got a deal here, I can't really live with it, I got a mistake here, let's talk. I'm willing to talk to you, but let's do it. So what he did is then he does these tremendous handshakes, he embraces the man on the White House lawn, he comes back, and the whole right wing of Likud, I know, the tough guys there, Benny Begin, Meridor, maybe you, Ruby Rivlin, you guys don't want to give an inch on this Oslo agreement. You don't believe in a Palestinian state, is that correct?
I think that I don't believe in a Palestinian state.
I know Ruby Rivlin doesn't believe in a Palestinian state. Probably Benny Begin, I'm sure, doesn't believe in a... So you guys, let's say the 8, 10, 12 guys that really make up the old Likud people, you were sort of fenced out by Bibi. I mean, your voice was not heard.
My voice was heard, and I must tell you that I felt very much uncomfortable when I saw the shaking of the hand.
I'm sure you did.
You know,
it wasn't only a shake; it was like
it was too much like friendship. You know, too much friendship, and I don't know what happened. I think that Netanyahu wants, like in chess, to give a soldier in order to get the queen or something like that.
It's not working.
It's not working. The world has a solid idea. They support Europe, Chirac, England, Germany. They support the Palestinian attitude.
Arafat beat him to the draw. It's unbelievable. He has beaten, let's say all your arguments are good, and I'll advance your arguments, and this is a forum for you to advance them. But Yasser Arafat took over public opinion. I met with an Arab the other night who said to me that if Arafat doesn't move, he's very depressed now, and if the peace process doesn't move forward, he's going to march in the streets by September and lead a new intifada. I don't know if it's true or false.
That would be a mistake.
All right, it doesn't matter, but I'm saying where his mind is, where his thinking is. On the other hand, under the Oslo Agreement, he can't declare unilaterally a Palestinian state until 1990, or whenever this agreement is up. But Abi Ibn said on this show that if Arafat wanted to declare a state tonight, he'd get probably 100 countries that would recognize him. Yeah. Tragic mistakes in Israeli diplomacy.
I think, yes, Arafat can get it. He has, delegation in the United Nations, but that is not the question. I, as the mayor of the biggest city in the region of Samaria, so-called the West Bank, I say that we need to live in coexistence. There is no other possibility between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. And the question is, how do you coexist with your neighbors?
All right, we're going to hold that for a commercial, and we'll come right back and we'll see if it's not too late, baby. Remember that song? We hope it's not too late for these people to really live together, because as of tonight, it doesn't look very peaceful, or at least the ingredients don't look very peaceful in Israel or for the PLO. We'll be right back. We're back. I'm Leon Charney. We're speaking with Ron Nachman, who is the mayor of Ariel, a former member of Knesset, and next in line to be a member of Knesset for the Likud party, and probably an original member of the Cherut. I'm not sure, but I think so. Am I right? Were you original Cherut member?
Yes.
One of the real boys?
Yes.
Okay. What Ron has done is he's brought a map of the Oslo Accords, the Phase 2, and he's going to point out exactly what happens if the whole Oslo agreements are fulfilled and all the phases such as Phase A and Phase B and all the redeployments take place. And this is what Israel will look like. All right, Ron, show us.
Here we see Gaza Strip, and then we go on the safe passage to Ramallah, north of Jerusalem, and it goes from Gaza to Hebron, south of Jerusalem. By that corridor, like Berlin, Israel will become the only state in the world that another entity cuts its territory to two pieces.
Did the Rabin government agree to that?
Yes, because they agreed that Gaza and the West Bank will be one unit. Number two is the water. Here, you see those are the mountains of Samaria. Here is Nablus. Here is Ariel, the Pupik of Israel. My town is here. That's the belly button of Israel, halfway from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River. Here, under those mountains, there is 1/3 of the Israeli water. If we give up the land here, Arafat will own the water. And if we go north, let's go north, you see up to the Sea of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee with the Golan Heights. If we give up the Golan Heights to the Syrians, another 1/3 of the water will go to the Arab hands. So 2/3 of the Israeli water will be in Arab hands, and we will start drinking Coca-Cola.
Or Pepsi. Pepsi's allowed. The yellow is Phase B, which has not taken place yet. The brown is
Zone A.
Zone A, which is now under Palestinian control. And under the Oslo agreements, if a perpetrator of a crime came into this zone right now, if someone went to Ariel and God forbid, robbed or shot somebody and he came from Nablus, if he got back to Nablus, you wouldn't be able to apprehend him. Am I correct?
I'll give you a better example. This is Tulkarm.
Right.
It is near Netanya.
It's an Arab city.
Yes, Tulkarm, now it's Zone A, Arabic city. It is not so far from Netanya. How many miles? 10 miles?
9 miles.
9 miles. That is Israel width in the 67 borders.
Right.
And we have Kalkilia, another Arabic
These were all
city.
Arab towns before.
Yes. That is an Arabic town of Kalkilia.
Right.
It's on the edge of Kfar Saba. Now when they steal cars, and they steal now in 1996, yes, there were 35,000 cars stolen in Israel, most of them coming to that brown area. And we know that they are there. You can't do anything.
All right, Hebron is now brown under the new agreement that was made by Bibi Netanyahu, your mayor. I mean, your prime minister. So now it's a brown area. Now they want a road from
Gaza, cut Israel, coming to Hebron, and you see that that area, the yellow area, will become brown, and it
let's say everything was peaceful. And let's say everybody got along. And let's say the whole agreement was fulfilled. All the yellow area would become brown.
Yes, and the white color, the Arabs want that the white color will turn into yellow and brown. At the end of the process,
right,
the high expectations
right,
of Arafat, and that is what you have to understand, that in the end of the process, Arafat is waiting to have all that area, all the West Bank, to become one brown unit. And he will control, by security and civil control, all what he says the West Bank. That is now the problem. And if we take into consideration, if we take...
But you're wrong. That is not the problem now. That was the problem before. The problem now is, what do you do?
That's what I'm coming to. I'm coming to two things. Number one, Israel cannot withdraw to the 67 borders, according to the Likud party and the Labour party as well. Israel should compromise on part of the land there.
Right.
How much? We don't know. There are 70% that remain after Arafat got 30%. The Jordan Valley itself is 40%.
Right.
Arafat...
Well, let me ask you one question.
Yes.
When this whole Oslo agreement was taking place, Yitzhak Rabin was prime minister. He visited Ariel, I'm sure, right?
No.
He wouldn't visit Ariel?
One of the biggest scandals that I felt very bad with late Rabin is that since 1981, he never visited my city.
Really?
And he didn't want to come to any town or community, Israeli,
Is that right?
in the territories. And that
I remember
us,
the president of Israel came, Ezer Weitzman.
Ezer Weitzman was many times.
Right.
He was my guest.
Leon Charney was there.
Leon Charney was there.
Filmed it.
And you know what? That was a shame that by not recognizing us or delegitimizing us, that was something that we could not accept. And let me tell you, that is the situation. What
All right,
are we
so
going to do?
what are you going to do?
You see, I'm a mayor of a city, and I'm looking to find cooperation between me and the Palestinians around us.
Right.
And I think that the problem of the Palestinian state is not the terror activity. The problem is economy. The Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian Authority will not have enough power to stand independent unless the Arab countries will support them. And I expect to see Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, who owe you Americans their life after the war in the Gulf. I want to see their participation as well as Mr. Mubarak in north of Sinai. My idea is, and I wrote a letter to President Clinton, that in north of Sinai there will be a development so the Arabs, the Palestinians who live in Gaza, will be able to go south to north of Sinai and find jobs there instead of going only to Tel Aviv.
All right, we agree that economics is the key.
Let me just finish a sentence. And I would like to see projects on the daily life in the region together, joint venture, Israeli and Palestinians like.
Right, but do you want a Palestinian to have his own flag?
No.
To have his own post office?
They have it yet. They have their own post office.
Right.
They have their own flag. They have everything. They have even the army that was, torn out of Beirut. He came to the gates of Tel Aviv, that army.
So I understand it. You understand it. Ron, you're a bright guy. You're a lawyer. You're a mayor of a town. You're a Knesset man, an ex-Knesset. You go back. What do you do in terms of the world? You're not a guy who lives in a tunnel. You understand that you've lost a lot of public relations. Mm-hmm. You know that Arafat has taken a gain. How do you take that back?
You don't make peace by ceremonies in the White House in Washington.
Right.
Peace you can make only if the two people will feel safe, towards each other, and they will develop confidence and they will develop trust. What I, as one of the heads of the settlers, I would like to offer them, let's live together in peace and coexistence. Exactly as you, Palestinians, coming to work in our industrial park, and we created jobs for Arabs and Jews as well, Israelis and Palestinians as well. Let's build a new industrial park in different places in Judea and Samaria, so you will find jobs.
Have you ever said this to Shimon Peres?
Yeah, I said to Balin.
And what does he say?
Balin supporting us by that. I told it to the Prime Minister.
But you know that the Labour Party last week came out with a declaration that it supports a Palestinian state. That became part of their...
No, they didn't say so.
What'd they say?
Every time the Labour Party talks,
They're pretty close, though, right?
No, they talk very vague.
Right.
They said, we will not prevent or we will not be against a Palestinian state, but under those conditions. And you as a lawyer know, no army, no foreign ministry and nothing.
So a conditional Palestinian state.
It's not serious.
Let me ask you a different topic. There's a lot of problems in this country, too, about Jews. Who is a Jew? What is a Jew? Like your country. And you know there's a big problem there with the conversion law. I know for a fact that many conservative and reformed Jews work very hard to bring a fellow named Natan Sharansky to Israel, even yours truly. I talked to President Carter for it. I went to see Bruno Kreisky. A lot of people made a lot of efforts to make this guy a free man. He goes into the Knesset now, and he comes Mr. Moralist, right? He's the moral, they say he's the moralist of the Knesset. Yet when it comes for him to pass on the conversion bill, which would allow reform and conservative Jews who work for his freedom, he balks. So he's become a politician like everybody else, head of the Russian party, whatever it is. There's 6, 7, 8 members. He's got a lot of power. What's your gut feeling about something like that?
You know, the problem of who is Jew, every time when the Likud is in power and the Labour Party is in the opposition, the subject is raised.
Right.
And I think that the reform movement in Israel made a mistake by appealing to the Supreme Court of Israel, because by appealing to the Supreme Court of Israel, there was no choice but to change the law or to pull out the suit to the Supreme Court.
I have no problem with the Shas party.
No, but I think that in those days, a new law.
In these days,
right. Today,
right.
I think that is not a good idea. We should freeze the law. We should freeze the changes. We need to keep the status quo. And if I may call from your program to the reform movement leaders
and the conservatives, but the reform movement did it. Pull it out of the Supreme Court and let the Prime Minister of Israel find a solution not to make the changes that will hurt the American Jewry, the connections between Israel and the American Jewry. But you know it has hurt a lot. I'm sure you're aware of it.
I think it's bad to all of us.
You run a foundation for Ariel, for your city.
Yeah.
Would you be against a Reformed Jew helping you or against a conservative Jew helping you?
I make them an offer they cannot refuse. Let them come to my city and do something.
Shul there, right?
I said to the reform people, you are neglected because of political reasons, and we in the West Bank, the so-called settlers, we are neglected because of political reasons. Let's join together and do something together, like building a center for performing arts, for the culture.
If you were in the Knesset today, how would you vote?
Against the changing of the law.
So the law as it stays today,
the status quo must keep on going.
So what would happen to a Reform and conservative Jew if they were married, let's say, in
as it was from Ben-Gurion time up to now? It's fair enough for me.
So what is the law now?
The law is that nobody goes deep into the procedures and so on. Israel.
It's a great topic for this show, by the way.
I absorbed myself in my city 5,000 people, Soviet immigrants. Do you know that all of them are Jews or non-Jews? I don't know. It's very sensitive subject, and if it was good up to now, it can be good for tomorrow.
All right, Ron, we got an intellectual guy coming on. His name is Bob Weil. He's a great editor at St. Martin's Press. He's got some things to say about this topic, so we'll let him talk from the American side. We've got 1 minute left. You look happy, but I know a lot of things are troubling you because the process is not working. Is there anything that the Americans should be doing now? Americans, period. What should Bill Clinton be doing?
Americans or Jewish Americans?
No, Americans.
I think, and I can call upon President Clinton. Look, my dear President, you must put a pressure on Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and the other Emirates and the other Arab countries that they must go on the peace process and the peace track in order to achieve peace. I call upon President Mubarak. It's not enough that you came only to the funeral of late Yitzhak Rabin. It is time that you come and talk and make a speech in the Knesset. That is cooperation, international cooperation. And I think that we will have to find a way with the Palestinians to develop the economy in the region.
Well, the chances are very good that they're going to hear you, because I just got a letter from a cousin of mine that she hasn't seen me in 40 years. She's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. 40 years, Ron. This will warm your heart. And she sent me a picture of me when I was 5 years old with my father, may he rest in peace. So if Mubarak is listening, which I'm sure is, this show goes all over the world. It may even go to Mars now. I'm not even sure. We have interplanetary discussions. So I'm sure that Mubarak will hear it. Who else did you appeal to? President Clinton, for sure he will hear it. And Arafat will get a tape of the show, believe me. Anybody else we have to address to?
I think that Tulsa, they contribute money and contributions to my city, non-Jews, Gentiles, and they say, Leon, and you better remember that what they say. They say that in the Bible there is no green line, and in the Bible there is no West Bank, and in the Bible there is no occupied territories, but promised land to Israel.
The last word. You heard it from Ron Nachman. Good to see you. We'll see you in Ariel. And before you get browned, you know. We'll be back with Bob Weil, the superb editor of St. Martin's Press, who was the editor of that famous book, at least we made it very famous on this show, called The Secret War Against the Jews, the only one who had guts to print it. We'll be right back. We're back. I'm Leon Charney, and I'm here with Bob Weil, who is a phenomenal editor. He works with St. Martin's Press. And last year he received an award as maybe the second best editor in the country. Probably should have been first, but maybe there's a political connection. There usually is in all these elections. And he's he's edited books for Jerry Spence, big-time lawyer, Henry Roth, who was a great writer, and he's really kept his name alive. He's since died, but Bob has published his books. And if you remember The Secret War Against the Jews, this is the editor that had the courage to come forward and print that book. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
What's going on with the literary business?
It's very active, very thriving, and, many books are going on.
A lot of garbage books out there, though, aren't there, Bob?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. You get right to the point. I think, in terms of serious publishing, it's really under assault these days. And, the kinds of serious works of fiction and nonfiction, we find ourselves as good editors really, struggling to keep them, viable at houses while they say there's this Hollywoodization of American book publishing.
It's dangerous, isn't it?
I think it's very serious. I think the number of serious editors has shrunk incredibly. Houses are more inclined to go to the big book, the big picture, the next Howard Stern book, the next book that will sell 1 million, and we see a real serious erosion of good writing and good publishing, and we see the book as product rather than the book as literature.
Would you take on an O.J. Simpson book?
Generally not. For 2 years I've avoided O.J. Simpson books because I just did not want to get into that market. It's funny that you asked this today because for the first time in my life I could find myself considering one.
Is that right?
Because Jerry Spence has said he wants to put the entire O.J. Simpson case in perspective, and he's convinced me that I really have to look at it seriously.
Yeah, but his wouldn't be a gossipy book. It'd really
Absolutely
be an intelligent look by a very famous lawyer at one of the great cases of the century.
That's entirely true. I think he would look at the phenomenon of O.J. What does O.J. tell us about America? What does this case tell us about ourselves? What is our fascination? What is our fascination with JonBenet Ramsey? It tells us more about us than it does about the case.
What is it? Do you know?
About which case, JonBenet Ramsey?
Either one. Why do we get so excited to listen to a broadcast about a poor guy like Marv Albert who gets smashed, and we don't know, but here he's being indicted without corroboration of a woman who says that he assaulted her and did all kinds of tricks and terrible things. Today another report comes out that NBC backs him up and they're going to allow him broadcast. Frank Gifford is set up by who knows what, maybe set up, nobody knows. It's terrible. But these are the first lines on the headlines.
You're absolutely right, and it's a serious problem. I've heard it from the top levels of TV journalists, that they are required to put on as their lead story that a man's penis has been cut off by his wife. And, if they don't put it on, they will lose the ratings, and this is the major news story in America. And, you know, it's this, one of my other authors, Oliver Stone, says that when the news is controlled for profits and that the advertiser dictates who gets the most numbers on the show, that we will seek more and more to put on what will get the immediate fix for the American public. That the news is entertainment. The news is not necessarily what is news. And we are seeking to titillate.
Oliver Stone is one of your writers, correct?
I'm bringing out his first novel in September. But that does not come from the book. I have seen him say in print, specifically talking about what is the media, what is news about? Is news, you know, this dispassionate Walter Cronkite, you know, Murrow kind of look at the news? I think he would tell you not. He would say it's really based on ratings and profit, and then we have to do funny things to get the ratings high, and therefore, you know, John Benet Ramsey becomes, you know, #1 news. It's titillation. I really regard it as kiddie porn.
Would you do a book on Mr. Rodman, Dennis Rodman?
No, I wouldn't.
You think anybody should do a book on? I mean, we have free press here.
Oh,
so
absolutely. I'm not going to censor other people's books, but I feel that Dan Rather once told me something about the way he operates at CBS. He says, I can only be responsible for myself. I cannot change an entire corporation, nor do I try to. And I would have the same attitude about what I do. I have to be responsible about the books that I put out. I do not want them tabloid. I do not want them sensational. I want them to sell. I want to make a lot of money. I'm not the Red Cross. I'm not being, you know, service, you know, just to put out literature. But I'm not going to harm people and ruin people in the process, and I don't think I need to.
How inundated do you get from agents to put out books? How crazy are some of the proposals you get? I'm sure you get many of them.
You can get 20, 40 projects, calls, approaches a week.
Really?
And you can get, say, if you multiply that times 50, you can get 2,000 approaches a year, which is maddening. And, you know, many people don't know what you're interested in. I mean, you have to, like, I might know that a book on knitting will sell a lot of copies, but I personally am the wrong editor to send a book on knitting and cooking, yet I will get books on knitting and cooking. And so it's just, that is clearly, you know, it's just, you have to know who that editor is. And since, well, getting back to your original point, there are fewer and fewer real editors in the business, so that those real editors are being approached with, you know, really worthy projects which they have to say no on just because they simply don't have the time.
Well, is there a market for literature today?
It's small, but there is a market. And I think it can grow, and I think the serious book does find its market. However, the large part of American book publishing is, you know, based on, if it doesn't work in 4 or 6 weeks, it just gets returned. Right. And so often, so for example, you know, the book which you, by and large, you know, introduced to the American public, The Secret War Against the Jews, that book was in a return pattern when you discovered it.
Why was that, Bob?
I think we got out maybe 20 to 24,000 copies, and the traditional press did not cover it. There was
you
not.
Couldn't get a New York Times review, could you?
It was passed by the New York Times. So there was little traditional. In England, it was front page news. In this country, it was not covered.
But they wouldn't distribute it in England, would they?
No English publisher would publish it because, you know, for other reasons. But here, it wasn't reviewed. And we had already gotten back, say, maybe 9,000 copies. We were down to, say, 13,000 copies, and this book would have been a dog. It would have been a failure. And you know, discovered this book. You were, I believe, impressed with what was in it.
Right.
You saw that John Loftus and Mark Ahrens had spent years, you know, researching this topic, going through original sources, going to the hidden documents in CIA cellars and basements. And, you know, it was 4 shows, and, you know, this book suddenly found itself in a reverse pattern. We have now sold, between its 2 editions, over 60,000 copies in America. And, you know, but it's now word of mouth. The public now covers it. You know, people come to me. I once had, you know, a cab driver going to the airport.
That book had the whole Swiss bank account problem 5 years ago. The fact that the Swiss took the money from from the Jewish Holocaust victims. Loftus made a lot of allegations in his book about that, didn't he?
There's many sections on that. Right. That was actually not even news to me when I edited that book. And I think if you spoke to most American Jews, it was something that was implicitly felt, that, something was, where did all this money, what happened to this? But it was never corroborated, it was never demonstrated. So, finally, Senator D'Amato has gotten on the case, other people have gotten, and suddenly it becomes this international issue. But I think it was something that people knew in some ways or another. I'm sure you knew. Or
I had a feeling about it.
I have no doubt.
But the truth is, it was someone had to open it up. I think you got to give Al D'Amato the credit. He really did. He took the government of the United States and the power that he had in the Senate, and he used it. I'm not sure many senators would have done it. They would have told him to lay off, because it gets to an attack of the banking system. In the banking system, everybody's intertwined. And a lot of people don't want to attack that system. They think there'll be a collapse, and they're afraid, and they're petrified. So there's a sanctity about the banking system. But the truth is, and D'Amato, I've saw him, we're going to do a show with D'Amato and Stu Eisenstadt, who came out with this terrible report. And we're going to get into the whole topic very strongly. But they must be commended. And the United States has some dirty hands here. And the first guy who told us that was John Loftus.
Absolutely. I think the second chapter will be the U.S. involvement in making funds disappear and other things that went after the war. The U.S. government involvement does exist.
Right. In that book, he hits the Dulles brothers pretty hard.
And Nelson Rockefeller.
And Nelson Rockefeller very hard. And these were people who were walking around with dossiers as American diplomats during the period that post facto of the war. I mean, when the war ended, these were the people in command. And he makes an assertion there about Angleton, I think, this fellow who was head of the Israeli desk, who says he was a double spy or triple spy. I mean, his allegations are strong and fierce.
And some of them, there's actually, speaking of Rockefeller, there's an interesting point that Rockefeller, given his involvement, according to Loftus and Ahrens, was actually blackmailed into supporting Israel being accepted into the United Nations. So they forced Rockefeller to lead a movement with the South American government.
Well, many people read the book say, Leon, do you really believe this? And that's when I first met you. And I called you up and I said, Mr. Weil, I didn't know you then as Bob, I said, is this stuff true? And you told me you spent tons of money vetting the book to make sure that the book was true. Is that correct?
It is the most expensive legal vetting that has ever gone on a book that I've been personally involved with. John Loftus was, put literally through the ringer for months after months after months in demonstrating documents and work that he came up with. And he did satisfy literally several lawyers.
He's going to do a new book now on Pollard?
Yes, he is.
For you, St. Martin's?
Yes, it is signed up. I hope it will be delivered in manuscript form in the fall and that we can bring it out in 1990. It has Pollard's official cooperation. And I have not read it, but I think it will hold some extraordinary revelations about the American and the Israeli government.
All right, we're going to hold for a commercial. We'll come back with Bob Weil. He's an intellect. He's a Yale boy. And he's probably one of the best editors in the United States, if not the world. And he has a consciousness about Jews. And I want to talk to him about how he feels the Jewish problem is going on. What's happening with the Jewish problem in America today, if it is a problem. And he heard the mayor of Ariel, and I'd like to get his comments. So don't leave us. We'll be right back. Playoffs or nothing. We're back. We're talking with Bob Weil, who I consider one of the best editors in the world. You can tell I like the guy, and not only do I like him, Mario Como loves him. Henry Roth loved him. Henry's no longer with us. Jerry Spence loves him. Oliver Stone is with him. He's got everybody. He's got a roster of who's who in America, but fine journalism, not Dennis Rodman's and Marcia Clark, where I was a great prosecutor. But I you know what she said on television? This is funny. She says, I knew before we started the case that we couldn't win. So why don't you leave?
That's pretty dismal.
Why not leave? But you got.
I'll tell you one thing which bothers me. Maybe I'm alone in this, but a prosecutor gets $4.2 million advance to write a book about a case that she lost. I may be the only one, but I don't feel that prosecutors should benefit financially from books. Otherwise, they have a financial stake in the whole celebratory notion of the case.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
And there's something very wrong about that.
I was once involved in a case where I was a partner with a very famous personality, celebrity, actor, real famous, years ago. and someone took an action against us, and it was disposed of. But one day when I got him a little bit drunk, and I said, "Tell me, why did you ever take this case?" He says, "Don't you understand? You guys were celebrities. That's my career. And then I could do a book on it, or I could do something else about it." So it's terrible, and your point is well taken. I think they should be barred from writing books.
I mean, I can understand even the defense attorney. I mean, it's just, I may not like it, but you can see the...
But he's not on a payroll of a government.
But, a prosecutor then, benefiting, there's something wrong with it.
It's terrible. Bob, I know that you're very interested in Jews and Judaism. I know that from the way we've talked and the authors that you take on. You take on these esoteric subjects and topics that no one else takes on. And I don't believe that you're not an Orthodox Jew, right?
No, I was...
Are you raised as what, Reform?
Lapsed Reform.
Left-wing Reform.
Lapsed Reform.
Well, that'll put you on the other side of Mordecai Kaplan, Reconstructionist. So what do you feel Jewish culture and Jewish literature should be about?
Yeah, despite my upbringing, that's the whole, controversy in this country in Israel. It has nothing to do with your official status of your religion, how you feel about being Jewish. I am so proud to be Jewish and to be doing the books that I do, and I feel I have this responsibility not only to Jews but to all people. To I go to work every day, and I feel I have this moral imperative to try to, make people feel, make people care about anyone else. Yes, I can do this for, Jewish American books, which interest me because that's who I am, but I have a strong interest in African American books, in Native American books, and I'd say largely I have an interest in those whom I think have been oppressed, because I think they can tell us something about, where we're going.
What do you think about race relations in this country today?
I actually think they might be better. I sense just from taking the subway every day that they are better. I do worry very much about the racial tensions between specifically Jews and blacks in New York City. The traditional alliance, I think, from history was something that I was very, very proud of. And I think we have to work as Jews to really improve that relationship again, because I think it's vital to the future of New York City.
And do you feel any attachment to the state of Israel?
Yes, I do. Absolutely, in terms of also the future of Israel.
Are you offended by what is going on now in Israel with respect to this law that they speak about, which in a sense offends I guess the conservative and Reform Jews? Is that offensive, or you really don't partake in that? I
don't partake personally, but I do feel, as you mentioned previously with your guest, that it can have the effect of distancing me, even slightly psychologically, as a supporter of Israel, and I don't think that should be allowed to happen, because Hitler certainly made no distinction between who was Jewish. I was as Jewish as a Hasidic Jew. And I like to think that, I am all-inclusive in, how I regard American and Israeli Jews.
Well, let's talk about a Shabbos guy who was on the show many times, Mario Como. Was he fun to work with?
He was wonderful to work with.
Really?
As a personal human being, it was one of the great joys of my career. I worked with him when he was governor. And the only time he normally had to call me was on Sunday mornings, where I called him. And we would have long talks about things like public charity, moral rights, the whole death penalty issue. He would ask me about if I knew about such and such saint. He asked me, I work for St. Martin's Press, who St. Martin's was, and I didn't know. And he gives me a lecture and tells me about St. Martin's being the saint of beggars and, taking care of the poor. And I felt humbled by that.
Is that what your company is? Takes care of the poor?
I don't think so. But it's just...
He's a fascinating guy, though, Mario Como.
The intellectuality was extraordinary, and the compassion. And I only knew him in that aspect, but it was such really a thrill to work with that man and see him on that level. And he did his writing when he was a seated governor.
Great. And he's an intellectual person and a religious person. Very strong Catholic and very, very feeling about it. And death penalty. He feels it's inhuman in a sense. You know, he would never sign a death penalty bill. He vetoed it. Could have hurt his career. Maybe did, maybe it didn't. So in a way, he had a lot of character.
Almost all of my authors, for some reason, hate the death penalty. Jerry Spence loathes it.
Is that right?
Mario Cuomo, I know, despises the death penalty. Jerry Spence, I think, I don't know if he's actually taken on the case, but he's been dealing with a young black man in Chicago who I believe was on death row for 17 years for a crime that he did not commit, could easily have been put to death. It was a cover story. It was a big story in the New York Times, I think, last July. And it's just, he is so outspoken in just loathing the death penalty. It's something so moral, and I support that.
Tell me a little bit about your relationship with Henry Roth, and tell the audience, I'm not sure everyone knew Henry Roth, how great he was.
I'm biased, but I consider Henry Roth one of the greatest American writers of this century. Certainly one of the greatest Jewish writers of this century. He was called by Jewish Week just in the few years before his death, perhaps the greatest Jewish writer of them all. He wrote a book called Call It Sleep in 1934, which is hailed as one of the great classics, period, of the 20th century.
And then he didn't write for about 40 years.
60 years.
60 years.
60 years he was silent. And then this manuscript was sent to me in November of 1992. And it needed some shaping and it needed some formulating and, you know, just the voices had to be fixed and everything. But I saw this beauty, this magic, this incandescent language, and I said, my God, I have to do this. And I felt it almost was like a beatitude that this work had been delivered to me. And, you know, it's just, I've just finished. In fact, I have 27 pages left of 7,000 pages. It will be 4 volumes of Mercy of a Rude Stream. And the 4th volume will be out in December. But, you know, one of the critics in Boston just last year of the chief of the Boston Globe said, Roth will be discovered, say, 20, 30 years from now, the same way Melville was discovered 30 years after his death. And he felt that Roth, and this is not a Jewish man, David Mahegan, he felt that Roth's contribution was so immense of this recent series that, you know, it's just they would be regarded as, say, America's answer to Proust.
Books from Henry Roth, do they sell?
Modestly.
Modestly.
In hardcover, they may sell 10 to 15,000 copies.
That's it.
That's it. For a serious literary novel in America today, those are actually very good figures.
Who are the great serious novelists today in this country?
I think Philip Roth is a great novelist. I do not think that he has lost his voice.
Really?
I think
he has a new book out now.
American Pastoral, I think, is a superb work. And I think he's one who has really stayed true to his mission as a great artist. You know, great writers today. I wish William Styron would write another book. I mean, you know, Darkness Visible was small, but really Sophie's Choice is his last work that I think was truly great. You know, there are not many who are great, and, you know, we have to cherish them. I worry that the younger ones, you know, will not be coming up like that. That's our job to, you know, foster them, to hope that the 30 and 40-year-olds will come through like that.
So you're hopeful that the publishing business has not been, let's call it Reaganized. There's a woman called Judith Reagan. Is that her name, Reagan?
Well, it is. That is the future of American publishing. And sometimes, you know, I have a great company where, you know, I have people who support what I do and I balance it. I do very commercial books with very literary books. But sometimes, you know, you can go to work and you can feel you're waging war at the culture. That, you know, unless I do a huge diet book, or if I'm, you know, I'm going to say, you know, who was sleeping with whom and, you know, something, you know, I won't sell books. And I don't believe that's so, because I found in the end that you can sell good books.
You told me something interesting a couple of weeks ago. You said books are like your children. You really get emotionally attached to every book you put out. Is that a fact?
That's absolutely true. I mean, I feel this responsibility that someone has entrusted his work to me. And, you know, I am the parent, and, you know, I am responsible for bringing it from here to here. And if I don't do that, I let them down. And ultimately, that kind of personal caring is the best business in the world. It is far more important than ultimately the dollar signs.
We're out of time, Bob. I can tell you this. Any time that you are the editor of a book, every author that writes for you can be on this show, because you produce literature and you should be helped. You know, not helped. You get paid very well for what you do. But I think people should try to familiarize themselves with it, because you do important work, and not many like you left in America. Thank you for coming on. We want you back again. For our audience, we have an email address now, and you'll see it on the screen. So if you want to email us, you can do it at, I think it's lchar10410, something like that. Anyway, you can see it on the screen, and we'll be happy to hear from you. And we'll see you next week. Can't get another Bob Weil, but we'll try.